The diner was a small square of light pressed against a dark stretch of highway. Its neon sign sputtered in the cold night, a tired beacon humming against the silence of winter fields. Frost clung to the window edges, and the hum of the fluorescent lights inside mixed with the low hiss of bacon on the griddle. The air smelled of coffee and fried onions, of warmth stitched together with grease and routine. Elias Mercer had chosen this place because it felt steady. Life had been anything but. He slid into the corner booth with his boy, 7-year-old Samuel, who immediately set about arranging sugar packets into neat rows. It was a ritual Sam never failed to perform, one that calmed him as much as it amused his father. To anyone else, they were paper squares of sweetener. To Sam, they were soldiers, walls, fortresses, worlds within reach of his small fingers. Elias watched him with the tired devotion of a man who had nothing left to give the world, but everything left to give his child. His shoulders carried the memory of deserts, his back the rhythm of marches long behind him, and his eyes the shadows of places he could never unsee. He rarely spoke of the war, not because he had nothing to say, but because some things had carved themselves too deep. People in town called him the struggling veteran, the quiet man who took odd jobs and kept mostly to himself. None knew that his silence was stitched with the weight of survival. Across the diner sat Police Chief Marin Calloway. She was a figure the town leaned on more than they admitted. Her uniform carried authority, but her presence carried something softer, a loneliness that clung like a second coat. She stirred her coffee with deliberate slowness, watching the liquid swirl as though it held an answer. She was known for her strength, her sharpness, and yet, when she thought no one looked, her eyes carried the same kind of tired Elias's did. The night was quiet until Elias noticed movement. Shadows slipped across the glass outside, long, unnatural, sliding like stains over the window. His spine tightened. The old instincts, dormant but not gone, surged awake. The diner's door creaked, and 3 men stepped in. Their boots hit the tile with too much weight. Their coats dripped with cold mist. They scanned the room with eyes that knew what they were looking for. Elias rose halfway before he realized it, one hand pressing gently against Sam's shoulder to keep him back. The first man muttered, "Evening," but it came with a smirk. The second slid his hand beneath his coat. The third lingered, scanning faces, until his eyes landed on Elias. And in that split second, Elias felt the bottom drop from his chest. He knew him. The face was older now, gaunter, framed by an uneven beard, but the eyes were the same pale blue he remembered from years ago, in a desert too far away. Corporal Rayner. They had served together once, and the last time Elias had seen those eyes, they had been filled with fear on a battlefield where not all men survived. Marin's chair scraped against the floor as she stood, her voice sharp, commanding. "You don't want to do this." But it was already moving forward. The man nearest Elias drew a pistol, and Elias's hand closed around his wrist with the force of instinct. The weapon clattered across the tile. The second lunged, but Marin's firearm was already trained on him, her stance steady. The third, Rayner, hesitated, his gaze locked with Elias's. For a heartbeat, neither moved. Then he muttered low enough for only Elias to hear, "Didn't expect to see you again, Mercer." The fight ended quickly, but the words lingered, wrapping around Elias's ribs like iron bands. By the time uniforms arrived, the men were subdued, taken away in cuffs. The cook wiped his brow, patrons whispered, and the jukebox clicked on with a too cheerful song. Elias lowered himself into the booth, heart still racing. Sam pressed close, small fingers gripping his sleeve. Across from him, Marin sat again, her gaze steady, but not unkind. "You've done this before," she said softly. Elias nodded, the weight of recognition pressing down. Too many times. But in his chest, another truth burned. He hadn't just faced down strangers. He had faced down a ghost from his own past. The days that followed were restless. Elias found himself returning to the diner, not only for pie and ritual, but for the quiet presence of Marin, who seemed to sense the unease in him. She asked nothing, but her silences were different, silences that welcomed him to rest, not to hide. Sam adored her. He would run to her booth, grinning, calling her Chief as though it were a secret name. She taught him small tricks, how to spin a coin, how to whistle with fingers, and laughed when he failed. Elias watched from the side, torn between gratitude and fear that their fragile bubble would burst. One night, Marin slid a file across the booth toward him. "The man you knew, Rayner. He's talking. Says you left him behind." Elias's jaw tightened. The memory hit like a storm. A night in the desert, gunfire, smoke, men scrambling to cover each other's retreat. He had been ordered to fall back, and Rayner had been wounded. Elias had carried one man already. He couldn't carry two. The guilt had never left, though he had survived. "I did what I had to do," Elias whispered, "but he sees it different." Marin's hand brushed his. Not deliberate, not shy. Survivors always carry what the lost can't. The words cut through the weight, but not completely. The weeks stretched into months. Their lives intertwined quietly. Elias fixed the jukebox. Marin brought Sam a slice of pie on the house. They shared late-night walks to his truck, the boy asleep against his father's shoulder. And slowly, like ice melting in spring, Elias allowed himself to imagine a life beyond survival. The twist came back when Rayner escaped custody. It was small-town news, whispers of incompetence, but Elias felt it differently. Old debts had a way of hunting men down. One night, as the diner's neon flickered, Elias caught sight of movement near the edge of the lot. The shape lingered, then vanished. He knew it was no random shadow. Marin insisted on walking them out. Elias lifted Sam, who was drowsy from too much pie, into his arms. As they reached the truck, a voice cut through the dark. "You left me once, Mercer. Won't let you leave again." Rayner stepped from the shadows, weapon glinting faintly. His eyes burned with betrayal long nursed. Elias turned his body, shielding Sam instinctively. But before he could speak, Marin stepped forward, her voice steady as steel. "It ends here, Rayner. You want to aim at someone. Aim at me." The standoff stretched long, the night holding its breath. Rayner's hand trembled. Elias spoke finally, his voice rough but steady. "I didn't leave you. I carried one man, Rayner. I couldn't carry two. And I've carried that night every day since. You think I forgot? I relive it every time I close my eyes." The words landed heavier than any bullet. For a moment Rayner faltered. His grip slackened, his weapon lowering just enough. Marin stepped in, swift and sure, and within moments it was over. This time, when the uniforms came, it was final. Rayner was gone, swallowed back into the system. Elias exhaled, every part of him shaking with the release too long denied. Later that night, the diner was empty but for them. Sam slept in the booth, his head tucked against his arm. Elias sat across from Marin, the neon glow painting them in fragile light. "You remind me," Elias said, his voice low, raw, "that there's more to life than just surviving." Marin's hand covered his this time, not accidental. Her voice softened. "And you remind me I don't have to do everything alone." Outside, the frost glimmered. Elias lifted his boy into his arms, and Marin walked close beside him. Her hand slipped into his, warm against the cold. The shadows had come, but they had also left him with something he had thought impossible, a chance at light. Sometimes the very darkness we fear most is what teaches us how to live again. If this story found its way into your heart, linger with us. Subscribe, share, and listen again, for in these quiet tales lies proof that redemption, love, and courage can still be found, even in the softest corners of our nights.